$2 is all I got. But she's worth more than gold to someone who needs her. The smell of tobacco and sweat hung thick in the saloon as Jacob Thornton's weathered fingers counted the coins on the scarred wooden table. Dust particles danced in the late afternoon sunlight, streaming through grimy windows, and the creak of his gun belt echoed as he shifted forward. Behind the bar, Silas Beck held a crumpled deed in his meaty fist, a forged document claiming ownership of the trembling 8-year-old girl cowering in the corner. "She ain't for sale to bleeding hearts," Beck snarled, his gold teeth catching the light. "Got a buyer coming from Tucson who'll pay 20. Jacob's jaw tightened as he studied the girl's hollow cheeks and the way her small hands clutched a torn piece of calico. Her parents had died of fever 3 weeks ago, leaving her to the mercy of men like Beck who saw profit in desperation. The territorial registry office wouldn't open until Monday, but Beck planned to have her gone by Sunday night. "Name's Sarah," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible over the piano's off-key melody. "My papa said never go with strangers." "Your papa's dead, girl," Beck snapped. "Ain't nobody coming for you." Jacob stood slowly, his spurs jangling against the floorboards. 20 years of ranching had taught him to read desperation in both animals and men. Beck's eyes darted toward the back door where his partner waited, a sign of guilt Jacob recognized from countless cattle rustlers. $2, Jacob repeated, placing the coins deliberately on the table. "And I'll take her home to my wife." Beck laughed, a harsh sound that made Sarah flinch. "Martha Thornton's been dead 2 years, old man. Everyone knows you're just looking for cheap labor." The accusation hit like a physical blow, but Jacob kept his voice steady. "My Martha always wanted children. Reckon she'd want me to help this one." "Help yourself to the door," Beck said, pocketing the forged deed. "Girl stays until my buyer arrives." Jacob's hand moved instinctively toward his Colt, but Sarah's frightened eyes stopped him. Violence wouldn't save her. It would only prove Beck's point about desperate old men. Instead, he reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a silver locket, Martha's last gift to him. "This belonged to my wife," he said quietly. "Worth more than $20. Trade you straight." Beck's greed flickered across his face as he examined the intricate engraving. "Mexican silver? Spanish, from her grandmother." The saloon had grown quiet, other patrons sensing the tension. Even the piano player had stopped, his fingers hovering over yellowed keys. Sarah watched the exchange with the wariness of a cornered animal, understanding that her fate balanced on the edge of these men's words. "Done," Beck said finally, snatching the locket. "But if she causes trouble, she comes back." Jacob knelt beside Sarah, keeping his movements slow and unthreatening. "You hungry, little miss?" She nodded, tears cutting clean tracks through the dirt on her face. "Got fresh bread and honey at my place. Think you might like that." For the first time, Sarah's expression softened. "Papa used to make honey cakes." "Well then, we'll have to try making some together." As they walked toward the saloon doors, Beck called out, "Don't come crying when she runs off, Thornton. Orphan's got no loyalty." Jacob paused, but didn't turn around. Maybe they just need someone worth staying for. The late afternoon sun painted the dusty street in shades of amber and gold. Jacob's horse, an old paint mare named Mercy, waited patiently at the hitching post. Sarah stared up at the animal with a mixture of wonder and fear. "Never been on a horse?" she admitted. Mercy's gentle as a lamb. She'll take good care of you. Jacob lifted Sarah onto the saddle, noting how light she felt, too light for a girl her age. Her stomach growled audibly as they rode through the town's outskirts, past the blacksmith's forge where sparks flew like tiny orange stars. "Mr. Thornton." Sarah's voice was small against the wind. "Yes, child. That man said your wife was dead. Is that true?" Jacob's throat tightened. Been 2 years now. Cancer took her. "I'm sorry." They rode in companionable silence as the landscape opened into rolling hills dotted with mesquite and sage. Jacob's ranch spread across a fertile valley, the house modest but well-maintained. Smoke curled from the chimney. His housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, must have started dinner. "It's pretty," Sarah said as they approached the wooden gate. "Martha picked this spot. Said she could see forever from the front porch." As they dismounted, a rider appeared on the horizon, approaching fast. Jacob recognized the silhouette of Tom Bradley, the territorial sheriff, and felt his stomach drop. Beck had probably sent word claiming the girl was stolen property. "Stay close," Jacob murmured to Sarah. Bradley reined in his horse, dust swirling around them. "Jacob, heard you took on a ward today." "Legal transaction, Tom. Paid fair and square." "That's not what concerns me." Bradley's weathered face was grim. "Had a visitor this afternoon. Apache chief named Spotted Wolf. Says this girl might be his granddaughter." Sarah gasped, pressing closer to Jacob's side. "I ain't Indian, sir. My mama was from Virginia." "Spotted Wolf claims different," Bradley continued. "Says his daughter ran away 15 years ago, married a white man against tribal law. Had a child." Jacob felt the familiar weight of frontier justice settling on his shoulders. Territorial law was murky when it came to mixed heritage, and Apache claims often carried more weight than white men wanted to admit. "What's Spotted Wolf want?" Jacob asked carefully. "Meeting at dawn. Neutral ground by Willow Creek. He's bringing 30 warriors." Bradley's hand rested on his gun. "Says if the girl's not returned willingly, they'll take her." The blood drained from Sarah's face. "Please don't let them take me. Please." Jacob placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "No one's taking you anywhere, child. Not without a fight." "That's exactly what I was afraid you'd say," Bradley muttered. "Look, Jacob, I respect what you're trying to do. But 30 Apache warriors against one old rancher ain't good odds for anybody. Then maybe it's time to even them up." That evening, Jacob sat on his front porch with Sarah curled up beside him, wrapped in one of Martha's quilts. Mrs. Rodriguez had prepared a feast: beef stew, fresh cornbread, and honey cakes that made Sarah smile for the first time since they'd met. The girl had eaten 3 helpings and was finally starting to look less like a frightened wild animal. "Mr. Thornton?" Sarah's voice was drowsy from food and warmth. "What is it, sweetheart? If those Indians come tomorrow, will you really fight them?" Jacob considered his words carefully. Fighting's not always the best way to solve problems. Sometimes talking works better. But what if talking doesn't work? He looked down at her earnest face, so young yet already marked by loss. "Then we'll figure something else out." In the distance, coyotes howled their evening song. Jacob knew that by dawn, much more than coyotes might be prowling his land. But he also knew that some things were worth the risk, like a frightened child who'd already lost too much. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, Jacob noticed something he'd missed earlier. a small birthmark on her wrist, shaped like a crescent moon. Martha had mentioned once that Apache tribes often marked their children with symbolic tattoos or birthmarks. His heart sank as he realized Spotted Wolf might have legitimate claim after all. Dawn came too quickly, painted in shades of pink and gold across the valley. Jacob had spent the sleepless night cleaning his rifle and checking his ammunition, though he hoped it wouldn't come to gunfire. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, picking at her breakfast, while Mrs. Rodriguez fussed over her like a protective mother hen. "You don't have to come," Jacob told the girl gently. "Yes, I do," Sarah replied with surprising firmness. "It's about me, so I should be there." They rode to Willow Creek in tense silence, the morning air crisp with the promise of autumn. Tom Bradley was already waiting, along with 2 deputies and a small crowd of townspeople who'd heard about the confrontation. On the opposite bank, 30 Apache warriors sat motionless on their painted horses, a formidable sight in the early morning light. Spotted Wolf rode forward alone, his weathered face painted with traditional symbols. He was older than Jacob had expected, perhaps 70, with silver-streaked hair braided with eagle feathers. When he spoke, his English was precise and educated. "I am Spotted Wolf of the Chiricahua Apache. This child carries the blood of my daughter." "Prove it," Jacob called back, his voice carrying across the water. The old chief reached into a leather pouch and withdrew a small object that glinted in the sunlight. "My daughter wore this when she left us. The child should have one like it." Sarah's sharp intake of breath made Jacob look down. She was staring at the crescent-shaped pendant in Spotted Wolf's hand, her own fingers moving unconsciously to touch her wrist. "Show him," Jacob said quietly. With trembling hands, Sarah pushed up her sleeve, revealing the birthmark. A murmur went through both groups of watchers as they saw the perfect match. "She is blood of my blood," Spotted Wolf declared. "She belongs with her people." "My mama and papa raised me," Sarah said, her young voice surprisingly strong. "They loved me and took care of me. That makes me their daughter." "Your mother abandoned her duty to the tribe," Spotted Wolf replied, though his tone had softened slightly. "But the fault was not yours, child. Come home, and you will be welcomed." Jacob felt his heart breaking as he watched Sarah struggle with the weight of her heritage. She was Apache by blood, but American by choice, a conflict that had torn the territory apart for decades. "What if she doesn't want to go?" Jacob asked. "Then she will be lost to us forever," Spotted Wolf said sadly. "But the choice must be made today." Bradley stepped forward. "Now hold on. This girl's parents were legal citizens. That makes her an American citizen too, with rights under territorial law." "Your law means nothing to my people," one of the younger warriors called out, his hand moving to his rifle. The tension ratcheted up another notch as both sides fingered their weapons. Jacob realized they were moments away from violence that would solve nothing and hurt everyone. "Wait," he called out, dismounting from his horse. There might be another way. He walked to the edge of the creek, close enough to speak directly to Spotted Wolf. What if she could be part of both worlds? The old chief's eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly, rancher. Adopt her into your tribe, but let her stay with me. Teach her your ways during the day, return to my home at night. She learns to be Apache and American." "That is not our way," Spotted Wolf said, but Jacob caught a flicker of interest in his eyes. "Maybe it's time for a new way," Jacob pressed. "The world's changing. Kids like Sarah are going to be caught between both sides." Why not give them the best of both? Sarah looked back and forth between the two men, understanding that her entire future hung in the balance. Could I really do that? Be both? Spotted Wolf studied her for a long moment. You would learn our language, our customs, our stories? Yes, sir. And you would honor the memory of your mother, my daughter. I already do, Sarah said simply. Every day. The old chief's composure cracked slightly, revealing the grief of a father who'd lost his child years ago. She had eyes like yours, dark as winter nights, but warm as summer days. What happened to her? Sarah asked softly. Fever took her, same as your father. But before she died, she sent word through a trader. Said she had a daughter who carried our blood, but lived in the white world. Said to watch over you if anything happened. Jacob felt pieces falling into place. You've been looking for her all this time. 2 years I have searched. When I heard of the orphan girl in town, I knew it was her. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting dappled shadows through the willow trees. The two groups of watchers remained tense but quiet, understanding that this was a moment that would reshape relationships for years to come. I propose a treaty, Jacob said formally. Sacred alliance between the Thornton Ranch and the Chiricahua Apache. Sarah learns her heritage but keeps her home. In return, my land becomes neutral ground for anyone seeking safe passage or trade. Spotted Wolf consulted quietly with his warriors, their voices a mix of Apache and Spanish. Finally, he nodded. This is acceptable. But the child must prove her commitment. She will spend 1 moon with us, learning our ways. If she returns to you after that time, the alliance stands. Sarah looked up at Jacob with frightened eyes. Will you wait for me? Child, I'd wait forever, if that's what it took. The formal ceremony was simple, but profound. Spotted Wolf produced a leather cord strung with small silver discs, a traditional Apache necklace that had belonged to Sarah's mother. As he placed it around the girl's neck, he spoke words in his native language that seemed to echo across the valley. He's welcoming you home, one of the younger warriors translated, and promising to watch over you like the mountains watch over the valley. Jacob removed his own silver watch, a gift from Martha on their wedding day, and handed it to Spotted Wolf. A token of good faith. When Sarah returns, she'll bring it back to me. The old chief examined the watch with respect, noting the inscription inside. To Jacob, with all my love, Martha. Your wife was a good woman, he said unexpectedly. She helped our people during the drought 3 summers ago. Shared water when others would not. Jacob was stunned. He'd never known about Martha's kindness to the Apache, though it fit perfectly with her generous nature. She never mentioned it, he said quietly. The best kindness needs no witness, Spotted Wolf replied. Your wife understood this. As the ceremony concluded and both groups began to disperse, Sarah ran to Jacob for one last hug. Don't forget about the honey cakes, she whispered. I'll practice while you're gone, he promised. Want them perfect for when you come home. Watching her ride away with the Apache band was one of the hardest things Jacob had ever done. But as the dust settled and the valley returned to its peaceful quiet, he felt something he hadn't experienced since Martha's death. Hope for the future. The month passed slowly. Jacob threw himself into ranch work, repairing fences and preparing for winter. But his thoughts constantly drifted to Sarah. Mrs. Rodriguez, had become an unlikely ally, spending hours teaching Jacob traditional recipes and child-care wisdom he'd never needed during his childless marriage with Martha. On the 28th day, Spotted Wolf appeared at the ranch gate alone. Jacob's heart clenched, fearing the worst. "She chooses to stay with you," the old chief announced without preamble. "But she will visit us each summer and winter, learning more of our ways." "And you're satisfied with that arrangement?" Spotted Wolf smiled, transforming his weathered face. "The child has wisdom beyond her years. She told me that families are not made by blood alone, but by the love that binds people together. She learned that from you, rancher." Sarah appeared over the hill shortly after, riding a beautiful pinto pony and wearing traditional Apache clothing mixed with her familiar calico dress. She was sun-browned and confident, moving with a new grace that spoke of her time learning to ride and hunt with her Apache family. "Mr. Thornton," she called out, urging her pony into a gallop. Jacob caught her as she launched herself from the saddle, spinning her around while she laughed with pure joy. She was taller than when she'd left, and there was a new maturity in her dark eyes. "Did you miss me?" she asked. "Every single day," he admitted. "I missed you too, and Mrs. Rodriguez's cooking, and sleeping in a real bed." She grinned mischievously. "Though I learned to shoot a bow and arrow, and Spotted Wolf says I'm a natural tracker." That evening, as they sat on the front porch sharing honey cakes and stories, Sarah pulled something from her pocket. Jacob's silver watch, carefully wrapped in soft leather. "Spotted Wolf said to give this back with his respects," she said formally, "and to tell you that the alliance between our peoples is sealed with honor." Jacob accepted the watch with equal formality, then pulled Sarah close for a hug. "Welcome home, daughter." The words slipped out naturally, and both of them froze for a moment before Sarah's face broke into a radiant smile. "Can I really call you Papa?" she whispered. "I'd be honored if you would." As autumn deepened into winter, the unusual alliance proved its worth. Apache families began stopping at the ranch for trade and shelter during their seasonal migrations. Jacob's cattle were never bothered by raiders, and he often found small gifts, beautifully woven baskets, carved wooden toys, medicinal herbs, left by the gate in appreciation for his kindness. Sarah thrived in her dual heritage, equally comfortable helping with ranch work or practicing traditional Apache skills. She spoke 3 languages now, English, Spanish, and Apache, and served as an informal translator for both communities. On Christmas morning, a year after that first meeting at the saloon, Jacob woke to find Sarah placing a small wrapped package under the pine tree Mrs. Rodriguez had convinced them to cut and decorate. "What's this?" he asked, examining the carefully tied bundle. "Open it, Papa." Inside was a photograph, a formal portrait of Jacob, Sarah, and Mrs. Rodriguez, taken at the photographer's studio in town. But beneath the photograph was something even more precious. Legal adoption papers, properly filed and witnessed, declaring Sarah officially as his daughter. "How did you manage this?" Jacob asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Spotted Wolf helped me talk to the territorial judge. He testified that my Apache family supported the adoption, and Mrs. Rodriguez helped me with all the English words I couldn't spell." Jacob studied the papers, noting they were written in blue ink, the territorial standard for legal documents. No chance of forgery or dispute. Sarah was legally, officially, and permanently his daughter. "There's one more thing," Sarah said shyly, producing a small wooden box. "I made this for you." Inside the box was a simple wooden ring, carved from willow wood and engraved with both Apache symbols and Christian crosses. It was rough around the edges, clearly the work of young hands, but beautiful in its sincere imperfection. "Spotted Wolf taught me to carve, and Mrs. Rodriguez helped with the design," Sarah explained. "It's supposed to represent our family, all the different parts that make us whole." Jacob slipped the ring onto his finger, where it fit perfectly beside his gold wedding band. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." Later that morning, as they prepared to leave for Christmas services at the small frontier church, a messenger arrived with news that would test their new bonds once more. Beck, the saloon keeper who'd originally tried to sell Sarah, had been arrested for forging territorial documents and trafficking in stolen children. The investigation revealed a network of corruption that reached into the territorial capital. "They want you to testify," the messenger explained. "Your adoption of the girl helps prove Beck was operating illegally." Jacob looked at Sarah, who had grown pale at the mention of her former captor. "What do you think, daughter? Ready to help make sure other children don't go through what you did?" Sarah squared her shoulders with determination that reminded him of Martha facing down a summer storm. "Yes, Papa. It's the right thing to do." The trial took place the following spring, drawing attention from newspapers across the territory. Jacob and Sarah's story of cross-cultural adoption and alliance became a symbol of hope for peaceful coexistence between Apache and American communities. During his testimony, Jacob produced the original forged deed Beck had used to claim ownership of Sarah. Its red ink a stark contrast to the blue ink of legitimate territorial documents. The jury took less than an hour to convict Beck and his associates. But the trial's most powerful moment came when Sarah took the stand, speaking clearly and confidently about her experiences. When the defense attorney tried to suggest she'd been brainwashed by Apache savages, Spotted Wolf himself rose from the gallery. "This child speaks with the wisdom of both peoples," he said in perfect English. "She is proof that understanding is possible when men choose love over fear." The judge, moved by the testimony, not only upheld the adoption, but declared the Thornton Ranch an official cultural bridge territory. Neutral ground where Apache and American communities could meet safely for trade and diplomacy. As they walked out of the courthouse, Sarah slipped her hand into Jacob's. "Papa, do you think Mama Martha would be proud of us?" Jacob looked up at the blue territorial sky, thinking of his wife's generous heart and endless capacity for love. "I think she'd say we did exactly what she would have done." That evening, they returned to their ranch as the sun set over the valley in shades of gold and purple. The sight of home, whitewashed buildings, green pastures, and the small cemetery where Martha rested under a spreading oak filled Jacob with deep contentment. Sarah ran ahead to greet Mrs. Rodriguez and share stories of their adventures in the territorial capital. Jacob followed more slowly, savoring the sounds of family. Laughter from the kitchen, the lowing of cattle settling for the night, and the distant sound of Apache drums carrying on the evening wind. No longer a threat, but a reminder of connections that transcended old boundaries. As he'd learned in his 63 years, the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought with gold or silver. They had to be earned through patience, courage, and the kind of love that saw past surface differences to the human heart beneath. $2 had bought him a daughter. But the love they'd built together, rooted in respect for both her heritages, was worth more than all the cattle in Texas. Standing on his porch that night, listening to Sarah practice her Apache songs while Mrs. Rodriguez hummed along in Spanish, Jacob touched the wooden ring on his finger and smiled. Some investments pay dividends for generations. Don't forget to subscribe and consider giving a like to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.